You're going to hear people saying it was an illegal bridge. Crimea is occupied by Russia, is not really part of Russia. But I want to show you this. This is USAID and the International Republican Institute. These are US government-funded organizations. Their entire purpose for existing is to meddle in other countries' internal political affairs in violation of international law. They also do polls, and often they're looking for results to exploit politically, but they also do actual research to see what the dynamics are in a given region, to inform their strategy of finding divides, exploiting them to divide and destroy a targeted country. So this is Public Opinion Survey, residents of the Autonomous Republic of Crimea. This is in 2013. Notice what they're calling it, Autonomous Republic of Crimea. When it was part of Ukraine, it had a special status. It was not just a regular oblast, part of the rest of Ukraine. Even under whatever used to be considered Ukraine, it had a special status. People even then realized that this is not really truly a part of Ukraine. Circumstances of history have made it part of Ukraine, but we recognize very obvious exceptions to this, and it's reflected in the fact that it was an autonomous republic. It had its own independent parliament. It had its own prime minister. And if you go through this poll, you can read the methodology, which is very important, and you can look through all of these different metrics that they are looking at. But the one I want to focus on especially is, regardless of your passport, what do you consider yourself? And this dark blue, that is people considering themselves Russian. So it's obvious that all along, the majority of the people living in Crimea saw themselves as Russians. They saw themselves as Russians. Circumstances of history have left them in this gray area, this autonomous region of Ukraine, when they should have just remained part of Russia. In 2014, when the US government illegally and overtly overthrew the elected government of Ukraine and installed an anti-Russian client regime bolstered by Nazi militias, the people in Crimea obviously wanted no part of that. They saw what was going on, and they themselves requested Russian forces to come and protect Crimea while they organized a referendum and officially joined the Russian Federation. That is what happened. So this is an article from Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty. This is also funded by the US government, and the title of the article is Parliament Okays Putin's Request to Use Russian Forces in Ukraine. And the article says, earlier on March 1st, the Ukrainian defense minister said Russia had sent 6,000 additional troops into Crimea, along with 30 armored personnel carriers since February 28th. He said the step had been taken without Ukrainian permission and in violation of Ukraine's territorial integrity. The Russian move comes after Putin's office said Moscow will not ignore a March 1st request for peacekeeping support made by Sergei Aksyonov, the pro-Russian prime minister of Ukraine's Crimea region. And later on in the article, this US government-funded media outlet is going to admit that Crimea had their own parliament. They appointed this prime minister of Crimea, and together they requested Russian help and support and protection so that they could organize a referendum, correct this circumstance of history, rejoin the Russian Federation. And from 2014 onward, since they became part of the Russian Federation, they have been spared the worst of conflict that would unfold in Ukraine. And it wasn't just violence in the east, in the Donbas region, from 2014 onward. It was violence across the entire country. The Nazis, the Nazi militias who were buttressing the regime in Kiev, they carried out violence across the entire country. They were fighting Ukrainian forces in the west. Anyone who got in their way politically, they would use violence against. So there was terror and violence across the entire country of Ukraine. Crimea was spared it because they joined the Russian Federation. It is only recently that they have started to see violence as part of this conflict spilling over into Crimea. It's very obvious that the best interests of the people in Crimea were served by rejoining the Russian Federation and avoiding all of the violence and chaos that unfolded from 2014 onward, when the US government illegally overthrew the elected government of Ukraine and installed a client regime in its place. That much should be obvious to everyone.